In Monster Hunter World, there are many aspects to consider when taking on a hunt. The target, your weapon, these are all important, but hunters who want optimal performance need to consider the build they use via the gear and armor they wear. I'm Darcblade, and here are the builds that I use for the Greatsword. The skills that you can gain from armor and even some weapons can help shape your hunter into specialized hunting machines. With the Greatsword, a lot of these builds take advantage of the weapon's hard hitting and high damage numbers, thus they are DPS focused. Nonetheless, there are a few gimmicky builds that take advantage of the weapon's ability to block and it having the greatest wake up attack in the game. But anyway, the first build I use is the ELEMENTLESS build. This build is a straightforward DPS build which tries to max out and balance attack, sharpness and affinity. So for this build you'll need the Nergigante Helm Beta, Draken Mail Alpha, Draken Vambraces Alpha, Draken Coil Alpha and the Draken Greaves Alpha. I also use the Focus Charm 2 and for the weapon I'm using the Wyvern's Ignition Impact. This has an infinity increase augmentation on it and then an augmentation of your choice. I personally went for an attack increase. As for your jewels, the main mandatory one you need to take is an Elementless jewel. This boosts the power and attack of any weapon that has no element or its element is hidden, as it is with the Wyvern's Ignition. Afterwards, it's a case of putting in Tenderizer jewels, another critical jewel to max out that crit boost, attack jewels and an expert jewel. Now if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 100 health, 100 stamina, 1296 attack, white sharpness, 50% affinity so long as you have maximum stamina. This will actually be 100% thanks to the weakness exploit skill, and no element. As for your defense, you'll have a strong defense against dragon and thunder, but you're fairly weak against the other elements. As for your skills, you'll have the following: Critical Eye level 7, Attack Boost level 6, you don't necessarily have to go to level 6 so long as you go to level 4 to get that 5% extra affinity, Crit Boost level 3, that increases the damage of our critical attacks, Weakness Exploit level 3, which gives us 100% affinity so long as we're going for enemy weak points, Focus level 2, I would have preferred this to get up to level 3, but unfortunately I actually don't have a focus jewel to do this. Focus does help with the Greatsword by reducing the time it takes to charge up your attacks. Maximum Might level 2, which gives us bonus affinity, so long as we have maximum stamina. Power Prolonger, this is just a byproduct of the gear, it's not really needed on this build, and Non-Elemental Boost. You also have the set bonuses Elemental Airborne, which increases elemental damage when you're attacking in the air. This doesn't really apply to this build whatsoever, and Master's Touch, that prevents sharpness loss when you crit a monster. So long as you're going for weak points, you shouldn't lose any sharpness with this build. So as you can see, it is a pretty straightforward damage focused build. Like I said, I would have liked to have more focus, but unfortunately I wasn't able to work it into the build. Nonetheless, just having at least level 2 focus does help when it comes to the charge attacks of the Greatsword. Apart from that, everything else is focused on increasing our DPS, and whilst the attack power of this actual build isn't the highest a Greatsword user can get, as it lacks peak performance, it's nonetheless a build I often like to use with the Greatsword. Unfortunately though, a lot of the gear is reliant on the Final Fantasy crossover event thanks to the Draken armor, and the Wyvern's Ignition is locked behind every Hunter's Dream event quest. But even folks on PC have had opportunities to get the Wyvern's Ignition, and it will be featured in other builds, so it is a great sword I strongly recommend everyone getting. Anyway, let's move on to the next build, which is the Affinity build. This build sacrifices raw power in favour for having a very high affinity base rating. So for this build you'll need the Kaiser Crown Gamma, Damascus Mail Beta, Kaiser Vambraces Beta, Nergigante Coil Beta, and the Kaiser Greaves Gamma. I also have an Attack Charm 3, and for my weapon I'm using the Empress Galia Blaze, which has an infinity increase augmentation on it. As for your jewels, it's a case of using Mighty Jewels, Attack Jewels to get attack boost to at least level 4, Critical Jewels, and Expert Jewels. So basically any jewel that focuses on increasing your affinity or the potency of your critical attacks. Now if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 100 health, 100 stamina, 1037 attack, white sharpness, 95% affinity so long as you have maximum stamina, 270 blast rating, with a very strong defense against fire, but you're fairly weak to water and ice. As for your skills, you'll have attack boost level 7, critical eye level 7, crit boost level 3, maximum might level 3, focus level 2, weakness exploit level 1, and guts level 1. Guts works pretty much the same as Feline Moxie, enabling you to withstand a one-hit KO attack against most monsters. You also have the Teostra's Technique set bonus, Master's Touch, which prevents sharpness loss when you crit a monster. Now yes, I do have 1 point in Weakness Exploit, that does take the affinity over 100%, so part of it is wasted. but it was the only way to ensure we have 100% affinity when we actually attack monsters' weak points. If we're not attacking weak points, we still have a 95% affinity rating and thus crit chance, which makes it very potent. As I said, this build focuses more on critical attacks rather than raw power. Again, thus it sacrifices peak performance. If you are looking for alternatives, you can replace the Kaiser Gamma parts with Alpha or Beta parts and come out with a similar build. The weapon, it doesn't really matter what you use here, so long as it has at least a 20% affinity base rating. Anyway, let's move on to the next build, which is the peak performance build. Unlike the affinity build, this sacrifices affinity rating for sheer raw power thanks to peak performance. So for this build, you'll need the Nergigante Helm Alpha, the Empress Mail Beta, the Draken Vambraces Alpha, Kulftaroth's Malice Beta, and the Draken Greaves Alpha. I'm also using an Exploiter Charm too, and for my weapon I'm using Anguish, which is the Devil Joe Greatsword. This has an affinity increase on it and then an augmentation of your choice. I went for a slot upgrade. As for your jewels, the main mandatory one would be to use a Flawless Jewel to max out peak performance. Afterwards I've taken jewels to slightly help my affinity as well as increase my attack values. Now, if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 100 health, 100 stamina, 1277 attack, white sharpness, 25% affinity, so long as you have maximum stamina. This will be 75% affinity overall, so long as you go for weak points. You also have 240 dragon rating with high Elder Seal, and when it comes to your defense, you have fairly high defense against thunder and fire, but you're weak against ice and water. As for the skills, you'll have attack boost level 7, critical eye level 5, crit boost level 3, weakness exploit level 3, peak performance level 3, which increases our attack value so long as we have maximum health, maximum might level 2, free element level 1, this is just a byproduct of the gear we're wearing, it doesn't really affect this build whatsoever, and handicraft level 1, just to give us that little bit of extra white sharpness. You'll also have the Soul of the Dragon set bonus, Elemental Airborne, that increases the dragon portion of our attacks when we perform jumping attacks. So this build works best when you actually have maximum health. However, that is easier said than done. Maintaining a full health bar against some of the more aggressive monsters can be tricky, even if you are blocking and just taking chip damage. That is enough to take away peak performance, unfortunately. Nonetheless, should you be able to keep that health topped up, this is one of the strongest builds out there. Unfortunately though, if you're looking for replacements, the Draken pieces and Empress pieces aren't available on all systems at the moment, so you would have to swap them out. But so long as you can try to get that maximum peak performance combined with the other skills I have in this build, you should be able to create something similar. Anyway, let's move on to the next build, which is a little bit of a gimmick build, known as the Blunt build. This utilizes the Diablos set bonus that powers up weapons as they lose sharpness. So, for this build, you'll need the Diablos Nero Helm Beta, Kulftaroth's Eye Alpha, Diablos Nero Braces Beta, Nergigante Coil Beta, and Dante's Level Boots Alpha. I'm also using an Attack Charm level 3, and for my weapon I'm using the Great Wyvern Dual Blade. This has an Infinity Increase augmentation on it. As for my jewels, I'm using an Elementless jewel to power up the Dual Blade as the element on it, Blast, is hidden, and then afterwards I've gone for jewels to aid my affinity ratings. Now, if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 100 health, 100 stamina, 1200 attack, which will actually increase once you go below blue sharpness, an affinity rating of 40% so long as you have maximum stamina, with strong defense against fire, but you're fairly weak against ice and water. As for your skills, you'll have attack boost level 5, critical eye level 4, crit boost level 3, weakness exploit level 3, stun resistance level 2, a byproduct of the gear, but nonetheless it can be useful. Focus level 2, again I would have liked this to be a little bit higher, but unfortunately I lack the jewels. Maximum might level 1, non-elemental boost level 1, and you'll have the Diablos Mastery set bonus, Bludgeoner, that powers up weapons, increasing their attack as the weapon loses sharpness. Now with the greatswords, they don't lose sharpness quick, unless you block attacks. So with this build, as the fight starts off, block the first few attacks, enabling you to lose that blue sharpness and thus power up your weapon. Also with this build, a lot of the stuff is relatively easy to come by, so this build is relatively simple to craft. Anyway, let's move on to the next build, which is the free element elemental build. Normally greatswords benefit from non-elemental builds, but a few greatswords do have fairly high elemental ratings, but these high ratings are normally on weapons that have their element hidden. This build aims to bring out that hidden element to give you potentially strong elemental damage. So for this build you'll need the Kulftaroth's Fury Beta, Wrathsoul Mel Beta, Kushala Grips Gamma, Kulftaroth's Malice Beta, and the Wrathsoul Greaves Beta. I'm also using an Exploiter Charm 2, and for my weapon, again I'm using the Wyvern's Ignition Impact with an affinity increase and then an augmentation of your choice. You can replace this with a lot of the cool Trough weapons should you wish. As for the jewels, the main mandatory ones you need to consider taking are jewels of whatever element you are using. So for this case, Wyvern's Ignition element is fire, so I've included blaze jewels to increase the fire rating of the weapon. Afterwards, it's a case of adding some jewels to help with affinity, and then I've added another handicraft jewel to help add a little bit of extra sharpness to the weapon. Now, if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 100 health, 100 stamina, 1104 attack, white sharpness, 15% affinity, which will be 65 should you be going for weak points, 660 fire rating, with strong defense against fire, water and thunder, but you're weak against ice and dragon. As for your skills, you have Fire Attack level 5, Free Element level 3, which brings out the full elemental value of the weapon, Critical Eye level 3, Weakness Exploit level 3, Focus level 3, Handicraft level 2, Agitator level 1. This is a byproduct of the gear, but it's nonetheless still useful, and Maximum Might level 1. You'll also have the set bonus Rathalos Mastery, Critical Element, that increases elemental damage to a monster should you crit them. This build again is relatively simple to craft. The only difficult piece may be the Kushala Grips Gamma, but this can quite easily be replaced. A suggestion would be the Diablos Nero Grips Beta, as they have a similar amount of slots and skills. The next build is a little bit of a gimmick build, known as the Sleep Bomb build. The Greatsword has the greatest wake up attack in its True Charge Slash, but first you need to put a monster to sleep. This build is a sleep attack build that should hopefully allow hunters to perform that strong wake up attack more than once. Anyway, for this build you need the Zora Headgear Gamma, the Empress Mel Beta, Zora Claws Gamma, Zora Spine Gamma, and the Valhazak Greaves Gamma. I'm also using an Attack Charm 3, and for my weapon I'm using the Darcblade Tar. This is the cool Trough version of the Radaban sword. I've also put an affinity increase augmentation onto the weapon, and then an augmentation of your choice. As for your jewels, the main ones you want to take are sleep jewels to increase the sleep rating of the weapon, thus allowing you to potentially put the monster to sleep more than once. And then it's a case of adding jewels to increase your affinity, attack to at least attack boost level 4, and then I've also added a bomber jewel to max out my bombardier rating. Anyway, if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 100 health, 100 stamina, 1066 attack, blue sharpness, 55% affinity so long as you have maximum stamina. This should actually be 100% should you go for weak points on the monster, 330 sleep rating with strong defense against fire, but you're fairly weak to ice and dragon. As for your skills, you'll have Attack Boost level 4, Sleep Attack level 3, Critical Eye level 3, Weakness Exploit level 3, Peak Performance level 3, Bombardier level 3. This increases the damage of barrel bombs used on monsters. Earplugs level 2, a byproduct of the gear we're wearing, but nonetheless can still come in useful against weaker monsters out there. Windproof level 2, again a byproduct of the gear. Maximum Might level 2. Recovery Speed level 1, and you also have the Zora Magdaros Mastery set bonus Critical Status. That increases element attacks when you crit a monster. Now the main goal of this build is to put the monster to sleep as quickly as possible, then set up some bombs in a position to where your wake up attack will land, making sure that the first hit of your wake up attack actually comes from the greatsword and not the bombs. Should you hit the bombs first, unfortunately the wake up attack damage bonus will apply to that bomb and not your greatsword swing. But for getting maximum damage with this build, you need to include the bombs on your wake up attack at some point. But it is easier said than done, thus this is why it's a little bit of a gimmicky build. Anyway, if you're looking to replace bits, unfortunately this is very reliant on gamma stuff. The Darcblade Blaze Tar can be replaced with the Radaban greatsword, but the other bits of gear are difficult to do so. So I would find it difficult to suggest replacements for this build, unfortunately. Anyway, let's move on to the next build, which is the tank build. The greatsword does have the ability to block, and whilst it may not be in the same league as say the lance or gun lance, it allows greatsword users to potentially create tank builds. This build focuses on being able to block most attacks and adding survivability and health regen to the user. So for this build we need the Dragon King Eye Patch Alpha, the Valhazak Mel Gamma, Kushala Grips Gamma, Valhazak Coil Gamma, and the Valhazak Greaves Gamma. I'm also using an Attack Charm 3, and for my weapon I'm using the Empress Galia Ruin. This has a health regen augmentation attached to it. As for the jewels, I've added Vitality jewels to increase my maximum health, Medicine jewels to help boost the recovery rating of this build, a Shield jewel that will allow me to potentially block unblockable attacks, And then I've gone for jewels to help boost my offensive capabilities with the weapon, thanks to Mighty, Flawless, Tenderizer and Attack jewels. Anyway, if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 150 health and 100 stamina, 1042 attack, white sharpness, 35% affinity, which is 85% if you go for weak points, 210 blast rating with a very strong defense against water, okay defenses against thunder and ice, and fairly weak defenses against fire and dragon. As for your skills, you have attack boost level 4. Getting an attack boost to level 4 allows you to get that extra 5% affinity, which is nice. Health boost level 3, recovery up level 3, recovery speed level 3, weakness exploit level 3, peak performance level 3, maximum might level 3, focus level 2, dragon attack level 1. This is just a byproduct of the gear, you don't have to worry about this. Guard up level 1, haste and recovery level 1. Haste and recovery gives us a chance to recover a small portion of health when attacking. And for your set bonus, you'll have the Valhazak Vitality Super Recovery. This set bonus, combined with recovery up and recovery speed, allows us to constantly regen health at quite an incredible rate. Unfortunately though, despite having great survivability, this build is difficult to craft. A lot of the stuff is hidden behind gamma stuff, which means arch-tempered monsters, but in the meantime, if you're looking to create something similar, maybe consider swapping out the Valhazak Gamma pieces for Valhazak Alpha or Beta pieces. Again, the Kushala grips can be replaced quite easily, and then it will be a case of using a weapon of your choice afterwards. Anyway, let's move on to the final build, which is the budget build. This build just requires the base version, the vanilla version of the game, and doesn't really require anything special in terms of updates added to the game. Nonetheless, you should still have fairly high DPS with this build. So for this, you'll need the Nergigante Helm Alpha, Damascus Mail Beta, the Diablos Nero Bracers Beta, Nergigante Coil Beta, and the Death Stench Hill Beta. You'll also have an Exploiter Charm 2, and for your weapon, I'm using the Leviathan's Fury, but this can be replaced with pretty much any weapon you want. The Leviathan's Fury is one of my personal favourites thanks to the way it looks. Now when it comes to jewels, none of them are really mandatory as this is a budget build, so it means it should work without having any jewels attached to it. As I do have jewels available to me, I put the following jewels in. I would definitely recommend putting at least one attack jewel in, and then afterwards it's a case of using jewels that are either available to you or that you personally like to use. Anyway, if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 150 health, 100 stamina, 1118 attack, white sharpness, 38% affinity, so long as you have maximum stamina, which will actually be 88% affinity should you be aiming for weak points thanks to weakness exploit, 300 dragon rating with average elder seal, and you'll have a strong defense against fire, but you're fairly weak to thunder and dragon. As for the skills, you'll have attack boost level 6. Granted, I've got it at level 6 thanks to jewels, but even without the amount of attack jewels I've put into this build here, you should have attack boost at least at level 4, granting you that bonus attack as well as bonus affinity. You also have health boost level 3, weakness exploit level 3, focus level 3, maximum might level 3, handicraft level 2, critical eye level 1, and evade extender level 1. Evade extender is just a result of the jewels I've used. Despite the build being relatively simple, it still has high damage capabilities and a fairly high affinity rating, so long as you go for enemy weak points. It also benefits from having level 3 focus, allowing you to charge up the weapon at a quicker rate. So there we have it, those are the builds I like to use for the Greatsword. Of course, Monster Hunter World is always being updated with new monsters and gear, which can potentially cause these builds to change and become even stronger. So if any major updates happen to any of the builds, I will release an updated video. Remember also that almost any task in Monster Hunter World can be taken on with any weapon or gear set. You don't have to use what is specifically in these videos. These are just the sets that I personally like to use. Anyway, I hope you found this video helpful or informative, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing the builds I use for the Greatsword in Monster Hunter World. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.